Hey, thanks, Jenny, for joining me on this episode of Spiritual Seekers Podcast. Jenny Schiltz is a multidimensional healer, channeler, shaman, and I've been following her for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. And I've had a couple of readings and done some classes. So I'm really super excited to have you here. So thanks for coming on, Jenny.
Thank you so much for having me.
So
I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I know. It's like, and we easily talk, and I'm sure we could talk for hours. So I guess first off, do you want to introduce yourself and like your work before we get into things?
My name is Jenny Schiltz, and I started this work really full bore in about, I think it was like 2013, where, I really started diving in and channeling and healing myself and walking that spiritual path. And it has literally been one foot in front of the other. And it's led me here. And sometimes I look back and I'm so shocked at the adventure that it's been and just all the changes that, not only within me, but within my family, within, my outer world and all that has shifted. So it's really been quite an adventure.
And did you start out like with an awakening and that you decided to become like a healer with the shaman work, or what was the igniting force that kind of got you on your path? Yeah.
Well, I came in very awake, very aware. And, I had a grandfather who had psychic abilities that he hid. And so he kind of, I think he just knew. He was like, oh, that one. And so he was often, when I was with him, he would work with me, and he showed me dimensional stuff, working with elementals, working with galactics. But I mean, I was little, and he died right before I turned 9. And I didn't, prior to that, it was like our little secret. Right. And when he died, I just kind of was like, I needed someone. So I started trying to reach out to my parents. Not a good idea.
No,
absolutely not a good idea. They completely flipped out because they weren't aware of my grandfather's abilities. Okay. It was so hidden. And my grandfather, actually, he died of cirrhosis of the liver because he drank himself to death.
Okay.
And one of the reasons that, I've had lots of conversations with him, since he passed, is he was never his true, authentic self. So he was consistently living a lie. And he was also an empath, and he took in everyone's stuff, and it was just how he dealt.
Right.
Because he had no one to help him see through it all. So, my parents, they were like, you're going to be in a straitjacket. It was insane.
Not well received.
No, not well received. And then like the other whammy was my sister's best friend's mother, used to talk to angels, and she was dragged out of the house by white coats. And I watched that. And so when I watched that, it was like, no,
not safe,
not safe, nothing safe. And I completely shut it down to the point to where I actually thought I made it up.
Yeah.
Like it just felt like, did I dream it? Did I, like I've always had such a vivid imagination. So when everyone said, you've made it up, I finally said, you're right.
Wow.
I did. And so, I went about my life and, had a couple of kids and was on the gerbil wheel and, was doing health education and that gerbil wheel is really something because you don't have a moment to breathe. It's always one thing into the next. And so I got gifted by being nailed by a drunk driver that broke my back. And at the time it was not a gift, but now looking back, I'm like, and what it did was it slowed me down. It really slowed me down. It was like, I was there when the kids got off the bus. I was able to be more present in my own life and in my own emotions,
right.
Without one foot in front of the other. And so then I did fine, right? I healed, it was okay. And I even had another baby. And then I was beginning to get back on that gerbil wheel. So the universe said, really? Like, you're going to do this again. And so then the fusion that I had, the surgeries I had from the accident failed. And when it failed, it almost sliced into my spinal cord. It did slice my cerebral fluid column. So I was sick,
Wow.
sick. So I went into repair surgery, and then I went into a nursing home that was awful. Like the place should completely be shut down. They didn't do proper care, and my spinal cord got inflamed, and it was going up to my brain. And I was just so drugged that I couldn't string sentences together. I couldn't do anything. And so I was asleep most of the time, and I started popping out of my body. And I just remember the first thing I saw was a guy in the corner with this cigar. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm waiting on my wife. I've always been waiting on that woman. And it's just the funniest thing to me, because I'm like, yeah, he was just waiting on his wife to pass, and he just happened to be hanging out. But then from there, Jesus came in. I just thought, okay, now I'm really drugged. I'm really crazy. And then it was Archangel Michael, Mother Mary, and Mary Magdalene. And really just start sitting in their energies and going, there's a whole lot to this world that I have not understood.
Yeah.
And, I was raised Catholic, so I was not open
to beyond those limits. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't even open to those limits. I was actually at that stage, I would say that I was more nature-based. I was like, God's everywhere.
Right.
But Jesus, I don't know about him. I don't know about any of this. I don't, because I had been so indoctrinated, traumatized by being in Catholic school for 12 years, and just everything that they throw at you. So that was huge. It was huge for me. And it was this big opening. And so I would look at my body in the bed, and it was like a puppy pile, right? I'm a big animal lover. And I mean, there were so many of my past pets, right?
Oh my God.
It was like cats and dogs. And I had one she was a Great Pyrenees. So big dog. And she just laid right on me. And they were all just surrounding me and doing their healing work. And
wow.
How amazing is that? So they explained to me that essentially I was dying.
Yeah.
And I had a choice. Do I go? Do I stay? And immediately, I'm a mom. And so immediately I'm going, I've got a husband I adore. I've got 3 kids. Of course I'm staying. And they're like, nope.
Yeah.
You cannot stay for them.
How old were they?
Let's see. The baby was 18 months. So I think Nikki, my oldest, was 15. So Brittany would have been 12 or 13.
Yeah. Wow.
So, like big ages, like when you need mom.
Right.
But they really hit it home. You cannot.
You're not just living for them. Yeah.
You're not just living for them.
Yeah.
And now, because I've got grandbabies and, I'm like, woo, you really are not living for them, because they have their own.
Yeah.
And if you haven't created
your
own, man, you're just going to be standing there going, now what do I do?
Right.
So they actually showed me the timeline of me leaving. And they were fine. Was there grief? Of course. But they were fine. My husband found someone else that was great and good for my kids. Like it was okay. And what it did was it released that obligation, that weight, and it let me go, okay, so why am I going to stay?
Right.
And that's when they said, well, if you stay, here's what we want.
Right.
And we want you to complete your journey, open up, start helping people through with all of your abilities. And really my work is turning more into guiding people from one reality into another, from one of limitation into expansiveness. And, so I was like, okay, I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't even, it wasn't like, with my husband and kids, they showed me stuff. They showed me the timeline. They didn't do that for me.
You're supposed to figure it out on your own.
Right. I mean, it'd have been nice if they had, kind of showed me a little bit, but then I would have been, I don't know, pushing towards that.
Right.
So I agreed that I would stay. And, I think one of the most amazing things that I saw during that time, and I think it was about 4 days, was there was a man who was sitting in the chair, and he was an old man, and he's sitting there and he's just shaking. He's just shaking, and they have him strapped into this chair, and he's not actually there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm following Jesus, and Jesus goes up to him and he touches his head, and all of a sudden I saw the image of this man beating his wife. And I was
wow.
like, oh crap. And he said, he's in his own hell.
Wow.
He hasn't forgiven himself. And now he's in life review, but he's gotten stuck
Mm-hmm.
in what he's done. And so, Jesus grabs his hands, and every time I tell this, I cry. So pardon me.
It's okay.
And grabs his hands, and he's like, you're forgiven.
Wow.
Hands are forgiven.
Mm-hmm. I just
And then he
got chills.
touched his, I know. And he touched his heart, and he said, this heart is forgiven for all the times it didn't love.
Mm-hmm.
And then he touched him here, and he just went over his brow like this. And he said, this man is forgiven.
Wow.
And and so he just, the man stopped shaking, and he just slumped.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you just felt peace,
Right.
absolute peace. And I did say to Jesus, I'm like, I've got things in my life I need to be forgiven for.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what he said to me? He said, you don't need me to forgive you.
Yeah.
You
got to
forgive
yeah.
you.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like that's huge, particularly when you're raised Catholic, right?
Yeah.
Because that sin and that
all the guilt and giving the power away.
Yes. Right. And he's going, you just have to forgive you.
Wow.
And then it's done. But this man's beliefs were that Jesus had to forgive him.
Right.
And I did say, I said, well, what if it was someone who's Muslim? And he goes, Muhammad would be here. And I said, oh, I mean, it was so eye-opening to me,
right,
to see that not only are we completely supported, but we're completely supported within the confines of our own beliefs.
Right. Exactly.
That we get everything we need. So, they literally, once I agreed, they put me back into the body and helped me text, because when I'm saying like I was not coherent, I mean, I was not coherent. And I texted my husband, I said, I'm dying, get me out of here.
Yeah.
And could you imagine getting that text?
No.
So he comes flying to the nursing home, and he realizes I have a serious fever. He calls the spinal surgeon, and the spinal surgeon is like, I'm sending a ambulance now.
Mm-hmm.
So then I spent the next couple of weeks in the hospital before I went to another nursing home, which was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that began the journey. But every time I had tried to talk about what I experienced, what I received was, it was the meds.
Yeah.
It was, you were just hallucinating. You were just hallucinating.
Oh.
And so I kind of tucked it away.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of was like, what if that's accurate?
Right.
So I tucked it away, and I was, on so many pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, absolutely ridiculous. And so it was a good year later, and I was outside in one of our outbuildings. We had a little bit of property, and I was wrapping Christmas presents. And a voice just came in so strong and said, you need to leave this area. You've got to get to Colorado, and you've got to get off these meds, or you're going to be dead before you're 50.
Wow.
And it was so strong, like a burning bush. Strong, right. And it was instantaneous. I mean, my husband walks in, and I said, we're moving.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what? I said, we're moving, and we're going to Colorado. And I was like, I have to go. And I was like, I want you to go with me.
Yeah.
But I'm going. And he's kind of going, he's like, wait, we have Christmas break coming up. Can we go out for a vacation? Like, he's like trying going, how do
are we leaving
this
tomorrow?
Crazy?
Yeah.
Right. Like, how do I manage this?
Right.
And I said, yeah. So we did. And he fell in love with the place, and we moved by July.
Wow.
And so it was like picking up everything and just going. And we didn't have jobs. Like, we picked up and just ran.
Right.
Because I kept saying to him, we have to go.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's in these mountains. I mean, I know that there's a ton of quartz here.
Right.
And so I think it amplifies everything. But then it was like the moment we landed in Colorado, it was on. That was when I started seeing ships. I started seeing galactics. I started seeing fairies again. I mean, it was like everything opened.
Wow.
And so then I spent the next, I'd say 2 years in bed. Just
still recovering.
Really still recovering. I mean, my back was hamburger.
Yeah.
I mean, they had told my husband, they said, we got our toes moving, but we really don't expect much out of her.
Wow.
So I just every single day, it was really just about everything I had to get the little one off to school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would go home and I was just flat out all day long. And I was in the realms.
Yeah.
And I was being healed, but more importantly, I was being taught.
Right.
And so it was a good solid year. And then I started the writing and the channeling. And then I put out a blog, and I didn't think anybody would read it.
Right.
And from that point on, it took off. And then I kept having people say to me, do you have sessions? And I kept saying, no.
Yeah.
Don't do anything like that. But by the time you've got 4 or 5 people asking you, it's kind of like the universe going,
yeah.
Come on, dumbass.
Yeah.
Let's move. Right. And so then I just began slowly. And then
What year did you start your blog?
2013.
I wonder if you could look back in your mailing list, at some point in the future, and let me know when I started following you. Cause I wonder if it was right after you started it, or if who knows? Cause that was around the time I was, I started reading and researching and delving into this stuff, 2009. So somewhere along the way, I feel like it's definitely been since before I lived in this house. So over 6 years. And then eventually I guess I saw that you offered reading. So I was like, oh, I always I'll always say, might as well try somebody who doesn't know me. And actually this was fun, a fun story. And I tell this to my students, that when I called you for, I had a reading with you one time, and you made me do the work. And I was like, oh, what? I wanted, just tell me stuff. I don't want to do the work. And you're like, no, start scanning your auric field. I'm not supposed to tell you what to do. You got to look for yourself. And I was like, damn, it was like,
I'm paying you to do
this. But it's sharing that power, being empowered. You're like, no, this is teachable moment. Got to look at your own things. I'm like, all right. So it was just, I love that. I thought that was really funny that I was like, and that was I had a hole in my bottom left of my auric field, and my dog had a wound on her bottom left paw too. So I was like, is she reflecting me? So that was memorable. So anyway, you can continue on. Yeah.
And then, life is so funny because I don't know, maybe it's just because I have to be shoved into things. I don't know. But my husband kept going snowboarding, right? And I'm stuck at home on the weekends, and I got really mad at him. I'm like, you're always off in the mountains and I'm stuck here. And he's like, honey, it's not my fault you don't have a life. Which I just was like, that's the rudest thing in the world. So I got on to Meetup, and then I found it was some spirituals, like walking in your spiritual light. And I was like, why not? And what that led to was shamanism.
Okay.
And from that point on, I came home for that day and I said, okay, that was a lot of fun. And I'm now in a 2-year shamanism program. He's like, and his response to me was, oh my God, are you gonna wear long skirts and beads and feathers in your hair? And I was like, oh goodness sakes. No, I'm still going to be me.
Right.
But it's just kind of funny watching this reaction with him.
Right.
And you and I had talked briefly about having partners that don't see, they're not spiritual.
Right.
And I think that there's some real big benefit to that.
Yeah.
Because
balance.
He's my grounder.
Right.
He's kind of like, come down from the clouds, you need to be right here, right now. But, in the beginning of this, I know he was worried about my sanity.
Yeah.
And I remember one night we were laying in bed and he's like, look, if angels are real, if all of this is real, I need a sign. My nightstand starts going in the dark. And this man says to me, there must be an electrical short. And I was like, that's it. I was like, I can't do this anymore with you. I was like, you've got all the proof.
Yeah.
your choice. I'm no longer trying to convince you.
Yeah, my husband had a blinking clock that wasn't making sense, and the alarm was going off, and it was right after his uncle died. It turns out it was him who was messing with him.
Right.
But he goes, after like the third day of it happening, he's like, I can't make sense of things I don't understand. And I was like, yeah, welcome. But that still wasn't convincing enough for him. But I remember just laughing to myself, being like, it's clearly, spirit.
Right. And I think when I released wanting him to understand it, that's when he actually began. Mm-hmm. And there's still a ton. He's kind of like, but we have grandbabies with abilities. My 13-year-old, holy cow.
Yeah.
There's no option here. And so he had made a comment one time, and I said, you're either supporting or you're not. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no one cares what you believe or what you're able to perceive. It's do you support someone else? And it shifted everything.
That's amazing.
And because it's kind of one of those things, like we just drag him kicking and screaming. Right. And because it's like, I don't know. It is what it is, man. Right. But he's a contractor, carpenter. He's very, and he's one of those really precise ones, everything is just so, everything lines up and makes sense. And except for me, like everything, he's just like, I don't know. Nothing you do makes any sense to me. But we've had some really neat experiences. He ripped his rotator cuff snowboarding. Mm-hmm. And I had been trying to help him, but I kept looking at the shoulder. And I had gone to a workshop, and we were talking about dropped organs. And immediately he comes into my field, and I realize his kidney's dropped. And I'm like, So I moved the kidney back up to the right spot. And then on break, I get this text message, and he's like, did you work on my shoulder? And I was like, well, kinda. Yeah. And he said, it's fixed. And I said, I worked on your kidney. You had a dropped kidney from when you fell. Wow. And so he'll tell people, he's like, I don't know what she did. He said, but I couldn't raise my arm one moment, and the next moment I could. We were headed to surgery. Wow. And so like those have helped. Those have helped along the way, those type of things. But.
And what about your grandkids? Because I remember hearing some of your stories about that. And that's just awesome. I think they were coming to you even before they were out of the body, right? They were.
Yes. Yes. They were coming to me in utero. I had 3 in 2020.
I didn't realize you had 3. I knew you had 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I have an adopted daughter.
Okay.
And she also had 1 in 2020.
Wow.
I've got 2 here in Colorado, and I still have 1 in Maryland. And so it was just, it was such an interesting time because they were connecting through the ethers with me.
And the dogs, when they were in transit, I remember that story too. Like the dog.
Oh yeah.
That was crazy. They were like in cages in the airport, and they were like complaining to you.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, all right, you all just need to stop. Like I can't, cause they're all just coming in all the time.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so the first grandbaby was born on January 11th.
Oh, that's awesome.
At 11/11.
Are you serious?
Holy moly. During the, I think it was like, it was some sort of huge transit.
Right. Oh yeah.
Big deal. I can't remember what it was now.
I can't, but I remember it was a big deal.
Yeah. It was like a really big deal. And I'm like, figures this kid is born during this because, even in utero, she'd say, I'm the wind. And she said, I'll be a breeze and a hurricane.
Wow.
And she's not kidding.
Wow.
She's not kidding. And they're all just very intelligent, very connected, and uber sensitive, gluten-free, dairy-free. And to the point where like, if there's any cross contamination, there's problems. Mm-hmm. So that's been very interesting. Just keeping everything so clean for them. Mm-hmm. They need outdoor time more than anything I've ever seen. And when they don't get it, oh my God. They are very vocal children, but it is so funny because the Rowan, who's the oldest one of them, she will grab my pendulum and go and check her mother's chakras.
Really?
And then she'll go, if they're not right.
She 1.5?
Yeah, she'll be 2 in January. So
Oh my God.
well, she'll be like 20 months, something like that.
Yeah. Either way, this is very
either
young.
way. And you just kind of like, it's just the funniest thing. It's
Oh
just
my God.
hilarious.
Yeah.
And the youngest one that was born in May, he really struggled being here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, really struggled. And that actually taught me a lot, because I would have to reorganize his system. Like I would look at his field and I'd go, why do you have a stomach in this layer here where it's supposed to be, but then a stomach here in this layer, and then a stomach here in this layer? It was like he was completely scrambled.
Wow.
And, and he really he wasn't present. He wasn't here. I could get him here by, like, I'd put him in the crook of my lap and I would tone over him and he would come in.
Wow.
Or if we'd turn the heat down. We had this inflatable hot tub, which turned out to be like my daughter's best friend, because the baby was just difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so she would always come over here, like, I'm going to put him in the hot tub. And so we kept it at a temperature that he could be in. But when he was in water, he would look at you and you're like, there you are.
Wow.
You're here.
Yeah.
But it took a lot to bring him in. He had tremendous fear.
Yeah.
And part of it is he is such a bright light that he attracts a lot of the opposite. And so one thing that's been really kind of neat is, before this used to always be like, mom is woo-woo, mom with her sage and her Palo Santo and her oils, it's mom. And now it's, mom, I can't get this baby to sleep. What do I do?
Yeah.
And so it is such a funny thing to
Your
me.
gifts are coming in handy.
Yeah. And they're branching into their own. I mean, it is absolutely amazing to watch.
That is so super cool. I had connected with one of my clients' babies in utero, and I heard him. She ended up having a girl, but I was hearing him, and I'm assuming it was the past life of that child was a British guy. And I was like, how am I hearing a British accent from a male? But I got the personality down, and I explained how the personality was. And that was like the first experience I ever had with that. And then after the baby was born, I'm like, it's a girl, because she didn't know what she was going to have. And then, as her child has grown older, like it's the same personality traits that this British man's voice was communicating to me when she was in utero. I was so like baffled by this whole thing, but it was so clear. It's like, where is this coming from? I can't be just making this up. Yeah. So it's just so interesting that, like, what a gift to the new generation of children being born now, or like it makes my kids seem like old school, and they're like pretty awesome. Yeah. Like they're teenagers and they're pretty gifted and sensitive, but not compared to the kids being born now.
I know. And I think it's just our job to make sure that nothing squashes them.
Yeah. To kind of hold that space and keep them open. Yeah. And I fought for that with my kids with my husband, because I was like, I'm like, la, you can't tell me that I have to like just deny them. I just couldn't do it. Right. It just was so wrong.
Yep. Absolutely. And because I even see it with my 13-year-old, it's like, I have to hold this space for her. And I mean, it's so funny. My sister's like, that one's going to dwarf you. I'm like, I know. and just what would have happened if someone had held space for us? Right. Yeah. What would the world be like?
I know. It's amazing to think what the world will be like, as these new ones are being born to people like us.
Right. Right.
And beyond.
And beyond. I mean, so it's so exciting. It's just, whenever I look at this world and I go, oh my God, everything's insane. And then I look at these babies and go, it's not all ending. It's going to be just fine, because why else are they here?
Yeah. Yeah. They're totally
right. And coming. They wouldn't have come in. They wouldn't have come in if there wasn't a future for them to be them.
Totally.
Because a lot of these little ones that are coming in, they're not coming in to clean up karma. They've already done it.
Right.
They're coming in to be embodied and live in their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, they might, melt the world. I mean, like I look at the oldest grandbaby Rowan's chart and I'm like, oh my God. Like she's going to set the world on fire.
Wow.
And she's going to be like, nope, that's not working for me.
Yeah. I call
And
my older son a master teacher because like he's here to like
Yep.
shake it up. It's like everyone's learning from his growth.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's awesome.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
And so with those of us that are not, our generation, where we're still like kind of stuck in the muck, or some people are anyway, but you offer a service to help them with the aura cleansings.
I do. Yeah.
So that's really beneficial. I know, I remember hearing Sierra saying how much she appreciated it, our mutual friend and your student.
Yeah.
But yeah. So if you want to talk about that, just to educate people on what you're doing.
So it started really small and organic. Spirit kept saying to me, people are really being impacted, not only from the solar flares. So anytime there's a solar flare, a CME, or
CME?
even corneal mass ejection, it's like the big dogs that the sun throws at us. What it does is it affects the magnetic shield of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
We're connected to that earth, like more than what people understand. Polluted rivers are polluted meridians.
Mm-hmm.
So when the Earth's magnetic shield gets cracked and it gets lowered, so too does our auric shield.
Okay.
So people are just experiencing all sorts of cracks, holes, weak spots. And the aura is very misunderstood, is what I'm finding. People are like, oh, I can go and get a picture of my aura. Yeah, but why is it there? What does it do? It's actually your interface. So, if I'm working through something, I'm working through grief. Okay. And I am just feeling really, really low. That actually is there on the aura. Mm-hmm. I go out to the grocery store and I may not have the best experience because my aura is showing I'm down in the dumps. I'm just sad. So it's like submitting a message to everyone around you.
Right.
And the opposite is also true. So sometimes, like if you've ever walked into a room and you realize somebody is fighting and you're kind of like, and then you can get that energy splat. Mm-hmm. It then sits on your aura and it translates, it goes back to the chakras. So it literally is an interface that is always communicating what's happening within the body and what is being received from outside through the interface, which then impacts the body. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people right now are in fear.
Yeah.
I mean, even people who they're not watching the news, they're not engaging, they're not doing any of this.
It's just kind of stuck on their windshield.
Stuck on their windshield. Right. That's a great way to put it. And so they asked me to begin this aura cleanse and just do it, clear them very quickly. And it's evolved. It's evolved. To the point to where if I see something in the chakras, I'll help with that. I send frequencies and I work on clearing out fields. And what I mean by fields, like if you have your own personal belief, but all of a sudden you're going, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The first thing that you should do is go, I clear and push away any frequencies or fields that are not mine.
Yeah.
And then check back in because we are being bombarded. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we're picking up on the frequencies that are being directed at us. We're picking up on the frequencies that other people transmit. Mm-hmm. And we are trying to figure out, well, who am I in this energetic soup?
Right.
And really being very clear. So a great example of a field is, have you ever met somebody who they don't feel good, but they're working and they're struggling and, like they're not feeling good, but they're still going to work. They're still okay. They're still making it. They go to the doctor, they get the diagnosis of fibromyalgia or whatever. Mm-hmm. Right. And the next thing you know, they're in bed and you're kind of going, and this is where people go, they're just exaggerating it. They were just fine 2 weeks ago. They did the diagnosis and now all of a sudden they're, mm-hmm. Milking it, right?
Right.
That's not the truth of what happens. What happens is fibromyalgia has a field.
Right.
And that field comes in with all the body pain, all the sadness, the loss of autonomy, maybe it's financial loss. I mean, it's got teeth.
But accepting that diagnosis, accepting that field.
Correct.
I had a girl who came in with MS, and it was written on her chart. And I said, I think that I asked her, like, how long has it been? And it was only like a couple of days. And I said, oh, time out. Don't accept it. Don't accept it.
Don't accept it.
And like, we did some work on her. I did repetitive work on her, and she was able to bounce it right out. And it was amazing. Right. So I believe that totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Like what I tell people who have cancer, I'm like, you need to push away the cancer field and bring in the recovered, the recovered field, because that one has hope and there's joy in it. And it's still acknowledging that something's going on in the body.
Right.
And, so it is kind of playing with the fields, but those are ones we know. There's so much coming at us that we can't define like that. So we also don't know how to push things away.
Right.
So a lot of times when I get into the space to where I'm working and I'm cleansing an aura, the first thing I do is push all these fields away that are not truth.
Yeah.
And then I see. So, yesterday, because the aura cleanse is twice a week, and it goes for a month. And so you can either do a revolving subscription. It's $11.11 per person for the entire month. If you do the rolling subscription, if you just do a 1 month, then it's $13.33. And yesterday when I went in, what I noticed, and it was the coolest thing ever, is there's this vector of codes coming in. And I had known, they had told me towards the end of September that starting October 5th onward to about October 10th was where we're going to reach the height. And then it's going to last for another 5 days. We're being nailed from the Galactic Center. Just absolutely bringing in all of these codes that are about uncovering and simultaneously remembering who we are and learning how to be okay in our own power.
And that lines up with the astrology of everything too for this week. Yeah.
Right. And so what I saw was like all this energy coming in. And when I went into that, there was sacred geometry. It was like all these gorgeous shapes just coming in. So what I did was then I worked with people's forms to clear out some of the blockages to that. Because
so they could receive the foods.
So they could receive it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so that they can receive it with as little body pain as possible. Because when we have a blockage of some type of stuck energy, oh my gosh. I was dealing with grief recently. My dog passed a year ago and my other dogs dug her up Saturday.
Oh my God.
And I get the understanding of it. They're like, you got something buried here. Like you haven't dealt with this grief properly yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what it did was it made my shoulder freeze. I mean, it was a complete lockup. And I went to the chiropractor and I had the most awesome chiropractor. He's actually not a chiropractor. I don't even know what it is he's doing. And he goes, this isn't shoulder. He said, this is back of heart chakra. And he was able to crack it open. And then I spent the whole day like, but
yeah, now you're
fine.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what happens to us. And so sometimes we get stuck energy like this. I knew what it was. I mean, it was kind of in my face. I was picking up spinal bones from, all over the house. Like,
oh my God.
And the dog smelled like death. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you guys. Like, really?
That's awful.
I mean, and kind of funny, right? Yeah. The spirit's like, we got you.
Yeah.
Just when you think you're over, your dog dying. How's this?
My dog died last year and she was really surfacing this week. And I was feeling her very strongly this week. And my sister's dog just got put down yesterday and she was, or 2 days ago, and she was really close. Like the two of them were close when we visited. So I felt like she was maybe surfacing to kind of help with the transition.
Very possible.
That's cool.
Like when I tap into it, it's like I can feel the space within where she is. And she seems like she's kind of holding the heart chakra front and back open. It's very interesting when I sink in and I'm in that space, Yeah. And I'm like, But dogs in particular work on our heart chakras.
Yeah.
I mean,
they break us open and make us
they
love bigger.
do.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, there's something so beautiful about the unconditional love that pets can give us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You know, but it's so the aura cleanse, I do all of that, but
yeah,
I think,
to help.
Right. And what I do is I do a whole write-up. And, you know, yesterday's was kind of about really looking at how you're spinning, how you're thinking. And one of the ways that I'm advising people to start doing is looking at what their predominant thought is. Maybe it's fear about food shortages.
Mhm.
Okay. There's so much talk out there. There's 3 sections to it, and being able to delineate it, because the first section is the programming. And that's that fear, and it's inner child, it's your trauma, it's your beliefs, and it's all of that kind of like wrapped up in one, right?
Mhm.
And that has a very distinct voice within us. And then over here, you've got the soul, and that's your highest aspect. And with that one, there's, you know, understanding, there's purpose, there's direction, there's guidance, there's trust. And so you've got this, and then you've got this. And like we're stuck in the middle.
Mhm.
And that's the human. And the human is the one that feels it all, that kind of hears both sides, particularly as you're on the, you know, on the spiritual path.
Right.
And the human is the one that literally moves in the direction. So it's the human that says, okay, I'm either going to trust this voice over here,
Right.
or I'm going to play into this. And we do that unconsciously without knowing it. So being able to sit down and journal and go, right now, here's what's on my mind. Here's what I'm upset about. Here's what I'm afraid of, and writing it out. Which part of what I'm feeling is programming?
Mhm.
And what part of it is out there?
Right.
And then going, okay, what is the truth behind all of this? What is the soul message? And then being able to say, well, how does all this make me feel? And being completely fine with how it makes you feel.
Mhm.
And there is so much here about, can we just be?
To give it a voice and to allow for it. Yeah.
Without judgment.
Without judgment.
Without shame. You know, it's so funny. I was doing some of that inner work that my dog helped facilitate. And I went outside to meditate. I went to a couch to meditate. I went downstairs to my bedroom, and this fly, oh my God, it would not leave me alone. Right. And I am just angry. I'm frustrated. Like, what the hell? I'd even put like, you know, some stuff on to keep the fly off of me, like some essential oils. And I'm like, what is this? Right. And so I messaged a girlfriend, and she's like, well, how does the fly make you feel? I'm like, I want to rip its wings off. Like it will not leave me alone.
Yeah.
And she's like, so you kind of want to scream, huh? I was like, yeah. And she's like, good, do it. And I did. I just let it fly. I was howling at the fly. And then the next thing you know, it went into, you know, just that sob,
like
over,
guttural cry. Yeah.
Guttural cry, and just getting it out, and that feeling of being abandoned, because that's big right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, you know, that feeling of like, my dog left me.
Yeah.
Right. But it's bigger than that. There is something that when we came into this experiment, there's a feeling of being abandoned and being lost and not supported. And so getting all of that out. So then, you know, I did that huge, ugly cry, and thankfully no one was home, and I'm just hollering and cussing and just rah, right. Fly left.
It's like, I did my work. I will bow out. I did
my work. I annoyed you enough that you finally allowed yourself to have a temper tantrum.
Right.
and then it was like, okay, I think I'm all right. I mean, I was exhausted, but I actually was like, boy, I really needed that.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, it's just so funny.
It feels so good.
It does. It does. Just to let yourself, whatever it is that I am feeling right now, going, you know what? I'm feeling pretty shitty right now. And it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, being able to say, I got an attitude problem today.
Yeah.
And usually what I find is when you voice it, it leaves.
Mm-hmm.
it just wants acknowledgement.
Right.
You know, but what we often do is we just sit there and we spin, and it's in
Yeah.
our mind, and it's spinning, spinning, spinning. And then that's when that programming takes over.
Mhm.
And when you're in the grips of that programming, it's very hard to hear the soul.
Mhm.
Very hard. So what I was recommending to the Aura Cleanse group with the write-up last night
Mhm.
was learning how to delineate the thoughts,
Right.
to see who's speaking.
Yeah.
And then you can even go like more into that programming of, okay, well, is it an inner child aspect? Is this a trauma aspect? Is this shadow? What is this?
Mhm.
And then working through it that way too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Identifying it.
right. And so
Yeah.
what I do is I encode the write-up energetically, so that when you're reading it,
You get a
you are
blast.
then
Yeah.
you're getting a blast, then you're able to actually connect into that quantum space that I created
Mhm.
and receive the healing. And it's funny because, you know, my oldest will take the write-ups and then she'll pull something that she's like, oh, that's great. And she'll make a meme out of it for me.
Nice.
And she had said to me, I guess it was about a week ago, and she's like, I went back to one from 2 months ago and you were working on this particular issue. And she's like, I'm reading it and I felt you working. And she's like,
Wow.
am I nuts? And I'm like, no, that's
Yeah.
how it works.
Yeah.
Because there's no time or space in the quantum.
Right. Right.
So at any point in time, we can tap into
Mhm.
what was done
Yeah.
and bring it into our form,
Mhm.
or say no.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, you know, even if you're seeing, like, if you go and you get some body work done and you're like, oh, that really was great, you can download that session.
Mhm.
And later, if the body's still
And just
hurting,
like,
go,
yeah.
okay, bring it back to that space. Okay. And
Right.
integrate it.
Right.
And that's that working on that quantum field. And that's actually empowerment.
Yeah.
It's being able to say, I can pop here. I can bring this in. I can utilize this. And again, I can say no.
Yeah.
So it's very neat. It's very neat.
It is. It's amazing what we're capable of, and we just don't realize it, you know?
Yeah.
Just with intention and just putting ourselves in the direction of energy. Like even yesterday during a session, I was playing with sending the energy in the circuit. Like I was sending a Reiki symbol, like up the one foot to do like the figure 8 and out the other, you know, and I wasn't even, I mean, I play like this sometimes, but it was just fun to kind of play with it and look at it objectively and be like, yeah, I could feel it. And I felt the circuit. Like it's just so cool. And it's just intention, you know? It's,
And I can't say that any of my sessions are the same.
Right.
I mean, and there's stuff sometimes that I'm kind of like, I'm with the guys, I'm like, what do I do here? And they're like, stop thinking about what you're going to do and just start.
Yeah.
And then the minute you get into that space, it's like, oh, I see. And it's just click, and it's done.
Yeah.
You know, so it is it's so much fun.
It is lots of fun. I was doing healing circles once a week during most of COVID. And it was like, we ended up sending healing to the earth as well as to people. Like it started out as a people list and then it turned into earth list first and then people. But like the people would really say like, what, you know, like right when you guys started, because it would be like, oh, you know, we're going to be tuning in from like 7 to 7:20. And they're like, I always feel it, you know, but it's just like, and I'm like, you could tune in later and it'll still be working.
Still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's just, it's so cool, isn't it?
It is.
Just, it kind of shows that, you know, yes, there's a desk here and a body and nothing is solid.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is movable. Everything is light.
Yeah.
And we get to play in it.
That sounds like a beautiful conclusion.
I know.
That was great. That was so awesome. It's so fun talking with you.
I know. It's like time just flies.
Yeah, that was great. So yeah, I guess that's a beautiful ending. I thank you so much for coming. I don't know if you have anything else you want to throw in there, but
no, I'm good. Just if anyone feels called, please join the Aura Cleanse and
JennySchiltz.com. I'll put links in the show notes and all that good stuff. But
you're
easy to find.
Yeah.
SCHILTZ. TZ?
TZ. Yeah, I actually have the other websites with the misspelling
Really?
because yeah, I've been married 27 years and my mother still misspells my last name. So I was like, I'm going to buy just the other domains so that if you land on that domain,
that's
you
good.
misspelled it, you find me anyway.
There you go. That was smart.
Yeah.
And with my last name, people get it confused because it's a foot with an E at the end. I go footy, like no,
right?
Just
No.
foot. Just
it could be
foot.
worse. It's like the telemarketers. Is Mrs. Schiltz there?
Oh,
No.
shits.
No. No. Sorry.
Well, I appreciate you taking time.
Yeah.
So I know
Absolutely.
We'll be talking soon. So thanks so
and
much.
It was great connecting with you again.
Thanks so much.
All right,
Bye.
beautiful. Bye-bye.
Bye.